fraud of our democracy, this infiltration of our democracy, was men took women or the elderly, the vulnerable, to the polling station, masquerading as though they were some sort of family member, and stood over them and directed them to put an X in the box that they deemed they had to do so.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. Returning guest, always amazing guest, good friend of mine, Raja Mia. How you doing, Raja?
Good morning, Nick. I put a shirt on specially for you, Nick, and you've got a tie on. So, next time I'll put a tie on for you as well, I think.
Well, next time I'm going to put a bowler hat on.
No, I don't own anything like that.
Cheers for coming along today. As everybody knows, I stood in the by-election in Gorton and Denton 10 days ago. And different parts of that hit the national news cycle as if it was new. And it was the fraud. And it was a sectarian fraud. It was something called family voting, which I've not heard of that terminology before. I'd heard of the issue, but not the terminology. And suddenly everyone's talking about electoral fraud as if no one knows anything about it. It's like, this has been going on for a long time, and everyone in politics knows what's been going on. Is that too harsh from me?
No, I don't think you go far enough. I would say there are plenty of people in politics who have been complicit in what's going on rather than just knowledge of what's going on. I think it crosses yet another line, Nick. I found it, and I don't mean to be disrespectful at all to any of my Reform friends. I have many friends who are in Reform, like
and me too. I've got many friends who are Reform voters.
My team, the Reform team in Oldham is essentially, without them, I would not be able to politically shape some of the responses in my town if I don't have people in the council chamber and the Reform team like that. So I don't mean it disrespectfully at all. And I spoke with my colleagues in Oldham and we had a chuckle. Nick, it's been going on for decades. It's been going on for decades. And just because you got slapped by it, not as in you, but as in Reform got slapped by it, and then Labour, got backstabbed by something that they've been partners in for decades, suddenly it's news. Let me explain some of what took place. Family voting. What a polite term we have to actually describe something that is outright brazen electoral fraud. What took place was men took women or the elderly, the vulnerable, to the polling station, masquerading as though they were some sort of family member, and stood over them and directed them to put an X in the box that they deemed they had to do so. A lot of these women, vulnerable adults, would have been took unwillingly. They would have been bullied, coerced. Some would have made a calculated decision. It's not worth the consequences of me doing this, because what difference does it make to me where I put an X on my ballot paper? And the reason why you saw a surge in what they describe as family voting is because it was a by-election and the machinery of the Labour Party and the Greens couldn't get their postal vote harvesting operation in order quick enough.
Wow, I didn't think of that.
So the family voting surge you saw was because they hadn't been able to register all of these people to postal vote beforehand, which is what they would normally have done previously. So that was why, is it Democracy Volunteers or Democracy Matters, whatever the independent, genuinely independent group is, who care not for the politics, a political party, they care for the safeguarding of our democracy, endorsed by the Electoral Commission. Let's be clear, they wouldn't be allowed in to watch what they and witness what they did if they had not been endorsed by the Electoral Commission, have been doing it for a substantial amount of time. And they were so alarmed, they released a report immediately as polls closed. And they, of course, they're polite, aren't they? They didn't go far enough. I would have gone further and said, okay, in which polling stations is this overrepresented? Because I would wager absolutely everything I own, including my daughter's prized Lego collection, that this is overrepresented in the Levensium long site sort of Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Muslim sort of polling stations, Burnage, those areas. And this fraud of our democracy, this infiltration of our democracy, goes back to how the Pakistanis in the main and the Bangladeshis, and Farage has admitted this now. He's acknowledged this in a little mutter not long after the elections when they told it the bloc Muslim vote, and he said, no, it's mainly the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis. It's what I've been saying to you for a long time. This isn't historically coordinated by religion. It's historically coordinated by clan. So in the Pakistani areas, it's the bravery system, the clan system that we've talked about. And in the Bangladeshi communities, it's the village politics. So it's a village dynamic rather than a clan dynamic. And historically, it's always been up to Labour's advantage. Yes. And the Greens came along, and you met the young woman, and I think she can't believe what's happened. Hannah Spencer, she can't believe what's happened. She was driving up and down the high street in Longsight, banging out the tunes with a bunch of Muslims, Pakistanis, sat in the car driving her around. And she's like, no, it can't be like this, because she's from Hales, she's from Trafford. And what she's actually found out is this is how elections are won. Yeah, you go and secure the block vote, because everything else will be what everything else always has been. But the block vote, as they've now found out, is transferable. And the Pakistanis in the main are angry and also maneuvering. They're angry on Gaza, 100% angry on Gaza. They've also been, and you witnessed it yourself because you're a candidate, there is a new cartel in town, and it isn't the old bravery system. It's the younger lads who identify first and foremost as Muslims. There's an Islamist dimension to this, or an international Muslim diaspora. What do they call it? It'll come to me. The word will come to me. They call it the. Oh, I can't remember the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a brotherhood, the Muslim thing. Yeah. So they see themselves as part of that Muslim family, that global Muslim family, and first and foremost. And some of those, and I grew up in many of these who went on that journey, they looked upon their communities and the corruption, the old bravery system, the drug dealing partnerships, the links with organized crimes, and they separated themselves for pure reasons. And they, like you leave one group and you find another group. But the group they found, I think, and many of them didn't realize at the time, had ulterior motives. They are Islamists, Nick. They don't want to live like we live. And what you've now seen is the block voting that's taking place. There was a fight for the block votes between the old school Labour Party, the Afzal Khans, the Lutfur Rahmans, all of those, the old school sort of Labour Party lot from Manchester. And then this new wave of aggressive, politicized, younger Muslims. And also what took place is some of the cartels, some of the braveries, the minor ones who had been watching on from the sidelines, they saw this as an opportunity to get their digs in. So that is what took place. They mobilized the Muslim vote, and the Muslim vote, the Pakistani vote, the Bangladeshi vote, en masse pretty much left Labour for Green, and voted in the way they've always voted, not according to our democratic norms, Nick. One man, one woman, one vote. The chart is stuff that this is industrial scale postal vote harvesting and voter fraud manipulation on a level we will continue to see, because not one of them have the courage, conviction to challenge what is taking place. The Electoral Commission will do nothing. The police most definitely will do nothing. It will get covered up, and it will give them the permission they need to replicate this elsewhere. And you will see it. The historical Greens that were the environmentalists, the ones who cared about animal welfare, well, they've now got interesting new partners, haven't they?
Well, that was going to be my next question. My next question was going to be a joke, which was, are you telling me that the Muslims in Gorton and Denton didn't vote Greens because they want to save the planet? Now, that was going to be my joke. But a more serious point is, what's going to happen with the Green Party now? Because you can't have blue-haired, woke, non-binary transsexuals fighting for silly rights next to radical Islamists who want the complete opposite. Now, it's a marriage of convenience at the moment, and I suspect that the radical Islamists are using a Trojan horse strategy to take over the Greens. Do you think that's happening, or am I fear mongering? But I foresee a civil war in the Greens because both those groups can't coexist in peace within that organisation, within that political party.
It will happen after the general election.
Right.
And
Okay.
what will happen is the Muslims, the political Islamists, they will remain silent and quiet, go along with it, and continue to strengthen their forces, not within the membership per se, but actually within its representation. So in May, you will see a lot of Green candidates emerge as councillors, and across the board, there will be Muslim candidates. They've let Hannah get in as a face, as a representative to it's a political play, isn't it? It's a clever political play. How can we be Islamists if we voted in a woman? How can a white woman as well, who was eating a sausage roll the day after? How can we be, racist if we done that? How can we be homophobic if the leader is gay? Yeah. They are playing a game. They're not voting green, Nick. They're not voting for the policies of legalizing prostitution and legalizing drugs. They're not voting for policies of advancing trans ideology to their children in primary schools. They're not doing any of those things. They've made a calculation that the way to power is now no longer through the Labour Party because the Labour Party betrayed them on Gaza. And the Muslim representatives that they had in the Labour Party actually were clan representatives rather than religious ideologues. So what they will now do is strengthen their representation in the grassroots, get hundreds of councillors over the line in May, get a handful of MPs. You will see the Greens win MP seats in Jess Phillips's seat, the Home Secretary's seat. These are very, very narrow wins for the Labour Party. And what the Muslims have done is they've made this calculation. It's a very shrewd calculation. Never think that these people are stupid, Nick. It's the first and most dangerous mistake you can make.
Exactly.
What they've done is they looked at how close they came in so many constituencies in the last general election. 100 seats there, 300, 500, 1,000. And they worked out that they essentially maxed out their core vote. The Muslims that they could get across, they've got across, and this is how close they came. Well, where do we make the shortfall? It's obvious where you make the shortfall. You find the woke liberals who believe in this multicultural utopia. 10,000 votes, 5,000 votes. So where the Greens were historically irrelevant. I beat the Green candidate in my town. Yeah. That Green candidate will be the Workers' Party Alliance or whatever candidate, because all the other parties will remove themselves from the space, and you will see the ultra left, the momentum type, the Corbyn type, who never went away. The anti-Semitic filth. Sorry, of what that ultra left that you've witnessed firsthand. What these people are. They never went away. They've got a core vote, and that core Muslim vote will borrow their vote, get in power, and then you will see the Green Party become something else entirely, more reminiscent of a different type of green. I would argue.
Let me ask you this: do you think Jeremy Corbyn, your party, do you think that's dead now? And same with George Galloway's Workers' Party. Do you think they're dead because the Greens are in the ascendancy, so the Muslim votes will just go to the Greens now and try not to split their vote? And my second question is, Labour are not going to give up on the Muslim vote. You can see the policies they're pushing through Parliament at the moment. They're trying to reclaim that vote. Do you think they can do enough to get the Muslim vote back under Labour? So two questions there.
I think your party never took off. I mean, that's just it's just the student union nonsense, isn't it? It reminds me of that sort of student union level of politics, where they're squabbling amongst themselves before they can even get out of the front door. Yeah, so it's gone. Sultana and Corbyn and that partnership and the executive they set up, it's bureaucracy. It's not going to get anywhere. They'll be arguing amongst themselves. They've got no ground operation. And it won't work. Corbyn as a brand has, within these communities, but he's a man in his 80s now, isn't he? There's the longevity isn't there. I would argue. So I think your party is dead in the water. Galloway and the Workers' Party exploited the division between Labour and its core Muslim vote, and it did that effectively in Rochdale at the by-election. Then it lost at the general election. Yeah. So I'll come on to that in a moment. But in the first instance, your party's gone and the Workers' Party will make a political retreat because the Pakistani vote that underpinned it has gone to green. They'll look at it and think, okay, it's not worth us squabbling. If you recall the by-election you've just stood in, the Workers' Party announced and then didn't announce, according to the BBC, its own candidate. That means the bribery system kicked in behind the scenes and made sure that the Workers' Party did not stand.
Yeah, I seem to recall a video of George Galloway telling his supporters in Gorton and Denton to actually vote Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed their mind and realised, yeah. And they did it, oh, let's teach Labour a lesson. I'm afraid at some point in grown-up politics and the future of our country, the purpose of voting is not to teach someone a lesson, it's to vote for the change you want to see. Teaching someone a lesson is a petty level of politics. I'm sorry. It's not how we can address some of the fundamental challenges we have in our country. So the Workers' Party are done. They're done. They're done. And the Workers' Party are done also because if they were strong enough, once those Gaza independent MPs got in, the four of them, why did they not switch to the Workers' Party? Because they won't work under Galloway. Why do the Pakistanis need to work under Galloway? Galloway and the Workers' Party need the Muslims. They don't need the Workers' Party.
15 years ago, they looked at George Galloway as we'll have to put up with the white man to get power. But now they're at a position where we don't need the white man anymore. We're powerful as a bloc. So why do we need you?
Yes. And the Greens, they need that woke left to get over the line in 10, 15, 20 constituencies. And yes, the Greens might do elsewhere, but I would love to see the Greens stand somewhere in May. And I want to see when they stand in areas where they don't have the bloc Muslim vote to hold them up, how well they do, because I suspect you will see very little difference in terms of their success. And that success will be determined through a correlation of where there is a bloc Muslim vote, you will see Green candidates elected. And where there is a bloc Muslim vote, you will disproportionately see Muslim Green candidates elected. And that is how they are going to take over. And as for Labour, Labour won in Rochdale at the general election only a few months after Galloway won the by-election. So Labour's historical Muslim core vote that they're fighting to keep hold of, there's a civil war within these communities, and that's between what I call the cartels, the old bribery system, and the new wave Islamists. And there is a division there, and it's who can win that vote. Can Labour go back in there and succeed? Not with the politics it's currently pursuing with Keir Starmer. I think he's just unpopular. However, he is pandering, isn't he? He is considering his decisions are filtered by the impact it will have on the Muslim community. And I just want you to pause about this. What is the 5%, 6% of the United Kingdom, 7% maybe? And the national policies are being determined by how will this look in terms of optics amongst our Muslim historic voter base. So the Iran thing, oh, come on, Nick, whatever you think or don't think, his decision making of not supporting the United States was not based on anything other than how well it impacts on our Muslim communities. It's the latest nonsense of the Islamophobia czar, the anti-Muslim hatred czar and the Islamophobia definitions. Where's that come from? It's not come from anywhere other than we need something to take back into these communities as currency to say, vote for us. So that is not the end. I think over the next 3 years, you will see more and more of that and more pandering to to conservative Islam, the Muslim identity, you'll see more. They've already said, here's grants for you to protect your mosques because you're under, yeah. Here's this anti-Muslim hatred person that we've appointed in government. We take you seriously. Here's a definition, and we're gonna, put the likes of Nick Buckley and Raj Amir in prison because their definition of, Islamophobia will be so aggressive that critiquing what is taking place will be seen as hatred, not causing offence. We'll be in prison for that. Saeed Varsi, the former conservative baroness, still a baroness, but she resigned over Gaza, gave an interview to Times Radio over the weekend, and she was clear in it that making reference to Muslims as a group, is Islamophobic. Hold on. I'm more than comfortable and have every right to make reference to people as a group because that's how we operate in this country. There are group dynamics across the board. Football supporters tend to behave one way. Women in the Women's Institute that I spent time with behave a different way. You know what group norms are, but we can't look at this demographic and say, hold on, Pakistani communities and Muslim communities, the grooming gangs, electoral fraud. We're no longer going to be allowed to do this because we'll be deemed to be anti-Muslim hatred or Islamophobic. Absolute nonsense. But the Labour Party have done that on purpose with the Tsar that they brought in, with his tweaking of the foreign policy position, all with a means of taking currency back into these Muslim communities to woo back the bloc vote. And on its own, it's not going to be enough. So I believe you, I, and this nation will see far more drastic measures introduced the closer we get to a general election. And they will think this again in May because the strategy that they've deployed will comprehensively fail at the locals. And Labour will get a kick even in these Muslim areas where the Greens will benefit.
Yeah, I foresee the Greens are going to benefit in the inner cities in the May election. Labour lost half its vote from the general election to the by-election. They lost 50% of their vote. So the 50% they lost, half of that went to Reform, half of it went to the Greens. And what pushed the Greens over the finish line was the George Galloway vote from the general election. Them going over to the Greens pushed them over the line. And we're going to see, as you said, we're going to see a lot more of that. I don't see how Labour recover. I think they're going to, as you say, I think they're going to push and push to try to get back the Muslim vote. But the big issue for me in the by-election was over 52% of the people didn't even turn up and vote. So therefore, the small minorities have bigger power because they turn up to vote. So you need fewer of them because the white working class, and they told me this on the street, especially in Denton, I'm not voting. I don't care. You're all as bad as each other. I don't care. I'm not voting. And then we get the Greens because of that.
In the days when I was part of the establishment, I suppose, Nick, I ran projects for an organization called the Young Foundation. Michael Young, the guy who helped shape the post-Second World War Labour Party manifesto. Yeah, Toby Young's his son, which is interesting. Yeah, but Michael Young was a proper, old school Labour, and we ran these initiatives in areas that we used the term cold spots, democratic cold spots, white working class communities in the main, where democracy had just collapsed. People don't vote, don't engage, don't participate, and have a very, very negative opinions of those who represent them. And my experience on this, Nick, and again, I'm disappointed, really, Nick, on reflection of how I sometimes think I could be on the inside of a political party, but I'm not. I'm on the outside. And I'm on the outside because of the grooming gangs, I think, in the main, and the need to remain on the outside. But there is a method here, Nick. We accept, first and foremost, that the majority don't vote, 52%, like you said, yeah? And if you drill down the stats, you'll find that the 52% is actually higher in the white working class areas. It's 52% across the board, but in the white working class areas, it'd be 75, 80, 85% don't vote. When you break it down by we call them super output areas. You'd call them, I suppose, polling stations would be the equivalent. Yeah, sort of thing. In the general election, I went to some of the polling stations in the white working class areas, and 10 votes, 20 votes in a polling station. These people don't vote because they've been failed. Let's be first and foremost. I never blame them. They have been failed, and they've been failed by a political class, and they've been failed over generations. And this belief is embedded within their communities, and it is to their detriment. And what needs to happen is really people such as myself, people like you, going into these communities long before any election and having these conversations and supporting these people, first and foremost, to once again not believe in the system, but to believe in themselves. And that's what's gone, Nick, and it's painful. And we've done this. I've done this work in areas, and we've seen that it's changed. But it's got to be not party political that does this. It's got to be, for the common good, an organisation that goes in for the common good to do this, and it's got to then operate over a sustained period of time, where people, by the time an election comes along, people feel empowered. They've been disenfranchised. They've had it took away from them. This isn't disillusionment. This isn't disempowerment. This is they've had it taken away from them. They're living in cages that don't exist, but they do in their mind. Yeah. So it's better. What's the point? I don't vote anymore means I protect myself. I don't dare to hope. And when a community has lost all hope, it is not a good place, Nick. So it can be done. It should be done. And if we're to save our nation, we have to do it. So again, I plea to, you've got a far bigger audience than I have. If I can be of any help on any of this, I will sit down with anyone, because we need to encourage our most marginalized areas, most marginalized communities, and it is the white working class, to believe in themselves, believe in the democracy that their great-great-grandfathers, risked their lives for. Now, let's look at the Chartist movement. Let's look who marched in Peterlee. It was the working classes who went out dressed in their white. They went in the white. They went in the Sunday best to say we are human, we are deserving, we matter, and that's gone. And I get emotional because I feel, I genuinely feel for this, and it's so easy to, and it's so dangerous what's taking place, because an insignificant proportion, 6% nationally, who are increasingly radicalized, and it's the Muslim Ummah is the phrase I was looking for some reason. It never came to me. Sorry, my Muslim friends, that I didn't recall the name for the brotherhood that I belong to, but it's a Muslim Ummah, are so powerful this way. It's not healthy, Nick, and we need to do something. And we need to stop mourning, stop complaining, and start mobilizing. And we're not there, are we? And reform are nowhere near. This is where I will like to finish on. What the Gorton and Denton by-election showed is that in the most marginalized areas where reform's voice should resonate the most, they will lose the elections. If they lose the elections in those areas, in the most marginalized areas of the working classes that they claim to represent, who feel the tensions of and lived experience of that failed multiculturalism, where will those people go when reform don't win in those areas? Because I will tell you now, reform won't win in those areas. Denton and Gorton proved it. They won't win in Kirklees. They won't win in Rochdale. They won't, as it stands.
Yeah.
I don't want to be negative. I know I'm not here to be negative. I'm here to provide, I think, analysis and an insight into what's taking place.
Yeah. I think the May election is going to be a fight at the moment between Reform and the Greens across the country. And I think we'll have a better idea in May about the lay of the land. Reform made some mistakes in Gorton and Denton. The candidate was the wrong candidate. People were telling me on the street that he's from down south. And so that message stuck. He's from down south.
One of the criticisms people always have of candidates is the legitimacy of those candidates. And having a local connection always, I've found, always enhances your legitimacy. You know, if you come from somewhere else, it makes it harder. It makes it harder if you come from somewhere else.
It does. It didn't do me. It didn't do me much good at the by-election, being a local lad. But it's interesting times, and we will see what happens with the Greens and Reform.
I don't think they've got the candidates, is the other thing. I don't think they've got the high caliber candidates yet. They're a new party, they're growing. They've mopped up on the old UKIP Brexit sort of people that they've had. But it takes time to grow, Nick. And I don't think they're there yet. And they ended up fighting. You know, when you're fighting on the opposition's terms rather than dictating the fight, you're already at a disadvantage. And Mark Goodwin found himself fighting on the opposition's terms. He was arguing about leaflets and why are they in Urdu? Listen, they're in Urdu because they're getting the voters out. Yeah, why don't you should be focusing on your voters? And if you thought that would get your voters out, great, but it didn't, did it? He then also criticised them on the Greens' position on gay right, you know, the gay stuff, the trans stuff, all of that. And I'm like thinking, oh, listen, the people who are voting for him don't care about that.
Yeah, and the people who are not voting don't care about that either. It just goes above their head as well. It doesn't affect them in their lives. So why am I bothered?
You've got to get your vote out. The first and foremost rule of winning an election is getting your vote out. We can worry about other layers, and it becomes a dark art, and it is a dark art where we talk about, okay, how do we keep some of the voters at home, or how do we keep, get some of the voters to switch sides to other parties because we know they'll never switch sides to us. But the first rule has got to be getting our voters out. And they did not fight an election on getting the voters out. They fought an election on attacking the Greens. And attacking the Greens wasn't what got their voters out. And the Greens, to their credit, Nick, they spun this narrative of hope. And then I think you follow Charlotte Gill, don't you? She's a very, very shrewd operator, does really good work. And she went and looked at some of the organizations that had historically funded that narrative, the Paul Hamlin Foundation, the Quaker lot, the Soros lot. They are, I think, more than just the Islamist and the lefty sort of coalition. There's power behind that. There's multinational establishment, whatever you want to call it. There's a move, isn't there, to inform and influence the politics of our country. There's layers to this, Nick, and it will play out. But for me, I think I'm very much interested to see how well the Greens do, particularly in the areas where there is not a Muslim bloc vote, and also how I think Reform, they're on a crest of a wave. Of course, they'll do well, but I want to see where they do well and where they're not doing so well, because that will determine where the general election will play out.
Absolutely. May is going to be very interested, and I'm sure we're going to talk a couple of times in May over the results when they all start coming out. Raja, as always, thank you so much for your insights, and we'll definitely do this again soon.
My pleasure, Nick. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you.